A 4K monitor is a multitasking machine. 4 pages wide of Google Docs? Sign me up. Gaming on it even makes eye candy games even more fun to look at. But there are some pretty big drawbacks. Pretty soon you realize that moving the mouse cursor over 2 feet back and forth to build a robot in Terra Tech, block by block, makes the game take way too long. Then there's the screen being so large your neck actually hurts from looking to see all the corners of the screen. And it's not even cheap to build a 4K 60 FPS capable gaming PC either. But with one simple trick, and no clickbait, we can fix all of these problems. A 40-inch 4K monitor is the same thing as 4 1080p monitors that are half the size. You can have the best of all worlds with windowed gaming, and best of all, you can do it with a PC that I built for less than $300. I don't have to twist my neck to look at all the different areas of the screen, and everything's in focus because it's in my cone of vision. Pair one of these $100 1U rack mount servers with a Radeon 6400 or NVIDIA Quadro T1000, and you got yourself a 4K capable workstation gaming at 1080p windowed. Of course, these recycled servers may be older than the kids that snipe you in Call of Duty, but you're only pulling 40 watts at idle, and you still get 20 CPU cores with 128 gigs of RAM. If you want CPU performance comparisons, check out this video up here where it's compared to a Ryzen 3900X. At the time I did these benchmarks, I was using a 3900X and a 2080 Super to play in 4K, but as you're about to see, that's actually pretty comparable to what we're going to play at 1080p. If we fire up Stray at maximum settings, the RTX 2080 Super is only getting 67 FPS in 4K. The Radeon 6400 got 61 in 1080p windowed. Same settings. Massive hardware cost savings. You just gotta play windowed instead of 4K, and then you can really start to cheap out on your hardware. Yes, we're comparing different hardware at different resolutions, but that's exactly the point I'm trying to make here, is that if you play at a lower resolution, you can use lower end hardware to get similar performance playing 1080p windowed compared to 4K full screen. Playing Besiege with everything loaded to the max, the performance is even closer. Of course, you could blow past it by dropping to 1080p on the NVIDIA card, assuming 200 FPS and 4K wasn't good enough for you. Rise of the Tomb Raider is one of my favorite games to replay, especially the non-story modes. It's one of the few modern games that still has Big Head mode. Remember that from the 2000s? Playing with the settings is also fun. The canned benchmark failed to get 60 FPS at maximum settings, but if you take all the ultra settings and bring them down to high and turn down just a couple other things like tessellation and shadows another step, you can get all 3 benchmark zones to average 60 FPS. Dirt Rally Ultra Preset with CMAA shows the 2080 Super just leaving the 6400 in the dust. You can claw back some FPS by bumping down things like reflections and cloth and crowds. 78 FPS is more than enough for a 60Hz monitor, but we're starting to see some limits to what the 10-year-old CPUs and a budget GPU can deliver. Control is a modern, really hard game to run, and it is not forgiving with GPU memory. Native 4K with RTX on is 8 FPS. I tried the same test later on a 6800 XT, and it reported over 11 gigs of VRAM usage, more than the 8 that the 2080 Super comes with. To get 60 FPS out of the 2080 Super, you have to turn RTX off, render just 1440p, and then use DLSS to make up the difference if you want high or maximum settings. On the AMD side, you can play at 1080p, with a 768p render resolution on medium settings. But after an hour of changing settings, I did get 1080p native working at 71 FPS, and I upscaled 768p over 100 FPS average. So if AAA gaming is in your future, you're probably going to have to turn down some settings here and there, and game at 1080p windowed, but remember, This whole setup is less than $300, and as a workstation, you've got over 128 gigs of RAM for your productivity. Rocket League has us topping 60 FPS at 1080p max, but not by much. Turn off anti-aliasing, you're over 100 FPS, everything's great. But of course, premium hardware will take you to the moon. But I'm pretty sure 4K monitors don't do over 300 FPS yet, and if yours did, you probably wouldn't be shopping for a $300 PC. Last game, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, with 4K texture mods on the premium configuration. At 1080p, you'd have to play Wall Staring Simulator to notice much of a difference. At least that's my justification for using 4K mods for the Nvidia, and no mods for the AMD benchmark numbers, but if I were playing at 1080p, I probably wouldn't bother with the 4K textures. Amazing what a difference the resolution makes. If I were trying to rip off Linus's 1U gaming servers on a budget, this is pretty much the way I'd do it. The budget configuration I used isn't even the fastest you could do with a budget like this. These 10-core CPUs have 8-core brothers with 10% higher clock speeds. As for GPUs, the Nvidia T1000 might be faster, but on eBay it's about $70 more expensive, and I'm not going to fully recommend it, not having tested it myself. Of course, it's one thing for me to tell you what to do, but would I actually live with this myself? Well, the kid that wakes up the easiest at night shares a wall with my office.
Hi, YouTube.
So having 15,000 RPM fans ramping up and down on the server means that I'm not going to have it replace the desktop in this office. And because of the very unique attic shape of this house, the fiber optic cables necessary to move that gaming PC to the garage would cost basically as much as the machine itself and negate any cost savings. But since this 1U PC is already on 24/7 and serving as the family server for Plex, Ubiquiti, and other things, throwing this video card in it means I can stream games from the server to something like a Retroid 3 Plus or the Master Bedroom TV. And since I'm streaming at 720p to the Retroid for most of the games, the performance should even be better than the 1080p numbers we've seen so far. So yes, I am using it, just not as a workstation replacement, just as a family gaming server. I say it's a family gaming server, and yet I'm the only one who has played any games. Technically, the wife has played Wii Sports twice in her life, but that's it. It's just me. This PC hardware min-maxing adventure started a whole year ago, and depending on some parts arriving later this week, I might be done with desktops entirely, using just these 1U servers and a couple of... Spoiler alert.